many times. This is
Okay.
this letter.
This is
But
this
I know
letter.
how to pronounce it. España is ña.
Look at our España, and yes, it has told us that the pronunciation is ña, ña. So it's not na, okay? It's like an ny, ña in English, and nj in some other languages. So ña, and absolutely, listen, Spanish letters have the sound. Sorry, Spanish letters have the name of their sound. And Spanish letters only have one sound, not like in English. So we have A, listen, instead of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, you know, Spanish is a lot more limited. The language has less sounds. So they have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, E. So they're very basic sounds until you get to this one, which is, I will definitely upload you the links. Yeah, I will. I'm going to do that because we're going to be working on this project soon. Okay. So, and so we get in here, and this letter is Enye. Enye. And when you learn the name of the letter, the word for the letter, you will remember. So say it to yourself. Enye. Enye. I don't need to listen to you. Enye. Okay. España. Right. In Catalonia, in the Basque country, the Enye doesn't exist. Sorry, in Catalonia, Valencia, the Enye doesn't exist. So they use this, España. And so you understand exactly what it means. España. You see? But in normal Spanish, it's Enye. Okay? And then we have another example, would be this word, año. What does año mean in Spanish? In English, sorry. Año in Spanish. In English?
I think it means year.
Very good. This year, last year, New Year, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Yeah, exactly. 12 months, which is 1 year. Absolutely. But look, in the Valenciano language or in the Catalan language. Yep.
¿Cuántos años tienes, Josh?
¿Cuántos años tienes? How old are you? Okay, that's very good. So, but look, in the Valencian language, now how do you pronounce that? Anybody? That is pronounced año. Año. Okay? There's no vowel afterwards. So actually, año is much easier than año. Okay? But there we go. Anyway, that's not important. But we're talking about Spain, and we're going to be talking about some of the peculiar things and particular things about Spain. First thing I'm going to ask you is, here's a question. What do Spanish people worry about? What are the main things you think that Spanish people not necessarily worry, but certainly what do they think about? What are the important things for Spanish people? I'm going to put you into 3 groups and ask you to discuss. I think there's 8 things there. What are 8 things which Spanish people think about, which are important in their lives? Okay, I say the word worry, well, could I say consider or think about? So 8 things that Spanish people worry about. Let me put you in your little groups for 5 minutes. Discuss. I want you to come up with a list of 8 words, and when we come back, you put them in the chat box. Okay? So 5 minutes to talk about what the Spanish people worry about. I worry about everything. I never sleep at night. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. Ricky and Sarah and Yesit, Clara, Paula, Tammy, Lena, Nelly, and Sarah. Go into your rooms. Go into your rooms and discuss what the Spanish people worry about. What issues are important for Spanish people? Yes, go into your room, or are you using a, there you go. Struggling in English, freedom, yeah, heat, okay, independence of Catalonia, yeah, absolutely, those are important things. Yes, you've been living here for a few months. Tell us, what are some of the most important things which you think Spanish people think about when they're talking on a daily basis, please? What are the kind of things they talk about every day?
So if you take about daily basis, for my family, taking my family as a main topic, they'll be like, okay, tomorrow's school. We had to pack the bags, be ready.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What
Then
else?
they'll be like, okay, so throughout this month, they'll always try to plan out the month. They'll try to
Mhm.
organize the month. So they kind of worry about the climate, whether it's good to go to a mountain or good to go to the beach. So yeah, that then they'll always try to do good organization with
Mhm.
going for far away distances, because these days, according to Spaniards, the gasoline price is kind of high.
Yeah,
I think Josh, you also know that about gasoline prices, right?
well, absolutely. It's very
Yeah,
expensive these days.
yeah, it's crazy. So
Mhm.
they think about that, and also then they'll think about the weeks, like Saturday, Sunday, where would we go? They always want to enjoy life. They want to
Okay,
live their life. So yeah, those kind of things.
that's interesting. Okay, so a lot of things there. Now, do Spanish people think about things like climate change? Do they talk about this, the environment? Have you heard them talking about this? Yes, in your family?
Actually, yes, because one time we got hailstone.
Yes.
Yeah, we got hailstone, and they were thinking about tomorrow whether there'll be any difference between the climates. They were checking the climate weather forecast from the Google, and because
Mm-hmm.
we were having a plan to go to the mountains, so
Yes.
we couldn't go because of rain and heavy hailstone. So yeah, they were kind of thinking about the climate.
Right, but maybe they were thinking more about the climate as it affects them today or tomorrow. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, not actually daily basis. Yeah, that's true. That's
So
true.
maybe not. Okay, but probably it's probable that all Spanish families, are selective about when they throw their rubbish out, and they throw, organic or paper or glass, which goes in different containers. So they might not be very conscious, but they certainly do it in a normal way on an everyday basis. But these are the subjects which most concern Spanish people. Okay? Apparently. All right. I'm not saying this is the only one, but money, home, education, health, work, image. That means their self-image. How do I look?
True point.
Yeah.
Really true.
Why do you say that? Yes, why do you say that?
As because for my family, image is kind of a thing. you know
Mm-hmm.
they always love to go out and show, yeah, we are this family. We are this family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
Okay.
way. Yeah.
And so it's true. I mean, even sometimes you might find it funny. I don't know if it happens everywhere. It will not happen where you are, Rike, at your school. But it is funny that sometimes when you go to school and you see some of the teachers, and excuse me, but especially the female teachers, wow, they look like they have dressed to go to some very, very formal event. And they've spent a long time preparing themselves to look, just 100% perfect with their clothes or their makeup. This does not mean that, and this is really important, it does not mean that you have to do this, okay? You are fine as you are, and you come as you are, because it's not how you look, it's how you act, all right? But it is true that, well, look, my son's 16, he spends the whole time looking in the mirror, okay? The whole time, brushing his hair, okay? Anyway, and he says, yeah, because other people are going to see me. I said, that's fine. Home. Spanish people are very house proud, okay? All right? Anyway, all these other things we said before. So health, work, image, food, and family. Okay, we're going to look at one specific one which is so important for Spanish people, and which they are so proud of. They are so proud of. What are Spanish people proud of, please? If you had the one thing which Spanish people are really proud of, what would it be, do you think? Anybody? Where they
I would say food.
Ah, who said that? Who said that?
Rike, Raki.
All right, Rike. All right. Yeah, food. That is number one. And the only thing I can say is the Spanish say, we live to eat. Okay? That means we enjoy our food so much that, it is worth making an extra effort to enjoy your food. Where they say in other countries, they always say England, okay, other countries, you people, you eat because you need to. And in Spain, we eat because we enjoy eating, okay? So this is something which is absolutely, which is just absolutely so important for people in Spain. And we're going to explain a little bit. So these things here were written by my colleague, Laura, who you will be in contact with at some point during the next few days or next few weeks. And she says, she's Spanish, 100% Spanish. She says, eating is a social activity to be enjoyed and shared with others. In addition, the daily rhythm in Spain is based on meal times. I suppose it could be in other countries before lunch, after dinner. But in Spain, it is a major concern. Okay, so if you say, imagine you tell your host family, I won't be home today because I'm going with another volunteer. I'm going to do something. The question will be, yes, but where are you going to eat? What are you going to eat? And then it'll be, what are you going to do or who with? Right? But first of all, it's, what are you going to eat? As though they don't quite believe you. So if you want to get used to Spanish life, eating at the right times is the first step. So we have our morning meal, which is the desayuno. The desayuno. That's easy to say, isn't it? Desayuno. Your desayuno, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, depends what time the kids go to school. But normally about 7 o'clock. It's very short. It's the shortest meal. Coffee, glass of milk, muffins, toast or cereal. Okay? So you will not be having, what I love in Hamburg, where I had some herrings, some smoked fish for breakfast, the same as in Newcastle in the United Kingdom. Smoked fish for breakfast. How wonderful. No, not in Spain. They would think you are completely crazy. When they go to other countries, they think it's very funny that people have bacon or have eggs for breakfast. It really doesn't exist in Spain. You then have your almuerzo, from 10:30 till 12 at some point there. It's just a mid-morning snack or coffee break. And it might be a bocadillo. A bocadillo is a sandwich made of a stick of bread with ham or with cheese or with something similar.
Trust me, it's so good.
And and if you come to Valencia, you will see that the almuerzo is a specific and very popular meal. Okay, in the almuerzo in Valencia, people sometimes leave work, go to a cafe, and they sit down and they have a big, like, whole loaf or stick of bread. And in that, they might have some meat and some potato chips and a fried egg. And then they close it all and eat this thing. And at 10 o'clock in the morning or 10:30, they have a beer. And afterwards, they have a coffee. And sometimes they might even drink an alcoholic drink, which is similar in German to schnapps or corn. This is at 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. So I have this very, very big almuerzo mid-morning. Not common everywhere. That's typical in Valencia. And then our comida, which is normally at 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. It is the most important of all meal times in Spain, lunch. Okay? This is why we say that days in Spain are longer, because you have before lunch. In fact, when they say the morning, la mañana, the morning means any time before lunch. So if you have lunch at 3 o'clock, it's all the morning before you have lunch. Okay? So that's when we're talking about the morning, right? And it's the most important one. So many restaurants will not even serve lunch until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And lunch in Spain often consists of 3 courses. There's a starter, a main course, and a dessert. Okay? And you will find this, and if you go to any normal restaurant, they will offer you what they call the menu del dia, which is the daily menu, which probably costs you about 12 euros. And for 12 euros, you have a huge meal. Okay? With a first course, a second course, and a dessert. So I've just been out with my wife. And we didn't have time to make lunch, so she wanted to go to a restaurant, and we found a restaurant. And she had a salad to begin with, and then she had some macaroni, some arrabbiata, which is a spicy macaroni dish. And then she had afterwards some fruit. I think it was a melon or half a melon or something. And with that, she was also given a glass of beer. So that was your daily menu. And that was, for example, that was 12 euros. So it's actually not very expensive, okay, if you're having it. Now, when you go home at lunch, you will find very often, and especially during the winter, you will find that the first dish is a very, very robust, strong dish. So it might be pasta, it might be beans, it might be a rice dish, but it has more carbohydrates, as all the carbs. The second dish would normally then be based on protein. It would be meat or fish or something similar. Don't worry, if you're vegetarian, the family will make something for you. But traditionally, the first course was not a starter, but it contained more carbohydrates, and the second course was more protein-based. And then finally, fruit or something like a yogurt or an ice cream or a small cake for dessert. And people normally drink water, although they do, a lot of families will drink alcohol every day at home. They will drink wine with all their meals. Okay. After lunch, then you can have a siesta, and it's absolutely acceptable. A siesta means some downtime, or, as I said yesterday, some people put on their pajamas and get into bed. You don't have to. Some people watch television, some people read a book. Kids tend to play with their phones or whatever. Okay? But you will have that break at midday. Next meal is what we call the merienda. The merienda. And the merienda is like an afternoon snack. Okay, an afternoon snack. And typically, children would have a pastry, a couple of donuts, some orange juice, or another bocadillo. A bocadillo, which is your stick of bread with a chocolate bar inside. Can you imagine that? So a chocolate bar between some bread. So it's more often sweet in the afternoon, but it might also be a banana or something like that. Yeah. And then we have the cena, or the Spanish dinner, which is light. It's lighter. It's probably lighter. It's probably something like a salad, and then, or a soup. And then when you think, well, that was a nice soup, and then they say, how many eggs would you like? What? Eggs? And then they bring you out, you know, a plate of bacon and eggs at 10 o'clock at night, for example, or sausages, or frankfurters, or a hamburger, that kind of stuff, or pizza, if it's fast food. So that would be an evening meal. That's your cena. And that can be very, very heavy if you're not used to it. Okay. Normally, things like fast food, with pizzas, kebabs, hot dogs, hamburgers, would not be served at midday. They would normally be served as the evening meal, because they tend to be quicker and to eat. And there is Yesit telling us about the wonderful Nutella. Okay, Nutella, which is also put on bread as your chocolate spread, and they have their own local one, which is called nocilla. Okay.
Yeah, nocilla.
Nocilla, which is just full of sugar and stuff. Okay, so there we go. So that's the food. It is important, and Spanish people love and are very proud of their meal, and they don't understand generally that they're a bit confused. They think, well, we know our food is the best in the world, but the rest of the world thinks that French or Italian is kind of more famous, or it's better. How can that be? Okay. So get used to it. Get used to it. Okay, here we are. Here's a few things I want you to think about. I want you to take a piece of paper in your mind, or you can take a piece of paper now. And here's a few things. When it comes to food in a Spanish family, we got some do's and don'ts, so things to do, yes or no. For example, if we said, try everything, or say you're not hungry, or buy your own food, or eat out of the family home, or offer to cook. Okay, so you've got a list of different things here. I want you to think for a moment. I'll give you a few minutes to write down on a piece of paper which things you think are a good idea, which is good advice, and put them in the yes column, and which things you think are not very good advice, you shouldn't do, and put those in the no column. All right? Let me tell you, we could do this online, okay, because we do have a platform where we could do this. The problem with this is that if we go onto our external platform, some of you will drop out of the meeting, because this always happens, okay? So what we're doing now is keeping it nice and simple, okay? I know some of you have very small screens, some of you have bigger screens. If we wanted to use an external platform, we would have to make sure everybody had at least a 17 or 20-inch screen. So that's why we're doing this very basic form. So I'll give you a couple of minutes then to think which of these things are do's and which of them are don'ts, please. Okay, I want no music, but I'll stop recording whilst you're doing this. Okay. Let's start again then. Okay, let me see. Write down. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think, Ricky? Try everything. Yes or no?
Oh, okay. Yes, of course. Try everything. It's
Okay.
always good to try.
Okay. What about say you're not hungry, right, Ricky?
Maybe not. Maybe then you should just eat a little bit.
Yeah. Don't say you're not hungry. What about buy your own food, Sarah Oschek? Yes or no?
I think it's no.
You think it's no? Okay, so buy your own food. You think that's no? Yeah, very good. Okay, Sarah, again, eat out of the family home. What do you think?
I think it's okay if you tell them it could be a situation where you go out with friends and then you eat outside, but you shouldn't do this too often.
Absolutely. So yes, you can, but it's not a great idea. Okay, they'll think you are suffering. Oh, and Spanish families cook pretty good food, but not all of them. You know, I hope you all get a good family. What about offer to cook, Clara? You think that's a good idea? Offer to cook? Clara? What about, oh yeah.
Sorry, I was in the breakout room with Clara and I think her mic isn't working.
Okay, who said that? Okay.
Me, Tommy.
Okay, Tammy then. Tammy, what do you think? Offer to cook, yes or no?
I would say it's a yes. So our host family can learn some German food.
Absolutely. Offer to cook is a great idea. That they will think, well, you probably don't know how to cook very well, but go on, you know, you can cook. Yes. But especially it's great to do it with the kids, isn't it? To do something very simple, or if you know how to cook, if you know how to bake cookies or something like this, it'd be a lot of fun as well. I bet the family would love it. What about, say it's the best thing you've ever eaten when they give you something? What do you think, Tammy?
I would say if it's true, then totally yes, but you don't have to say it every time. So.
But if you say it every time, they will believe you.
Ah, okay.
They will believe you, yeah, of course. So yeah, it's something you can say, even if it's not completely true. Okay, but if they give you a tomato, oh, that's the best tomato I've ever eaten. Or if they give you a cup of coffee, oh, that is the nicest coffee I've ever drunk. or if they give you whatever it is, you know. You don't have to say it every time, but that's what they're probably thinking. What about this? You say that your country's food is better. You say that your country's food is better. Lena, is that a good thing to say?
I think no.
No, absolutely not. No, because they won't believe you. What? Germany? Of course not. Okay. Or anywhere else. France? Of course not. Or Morocco? Of course not. Sri Lanka? Of course not. Sri Lanka, yes, it is a chef. Okay. Yes, it has trained as a chef. And I'm sure he's an expert cook. Radio. What about this one then?
Yeah, but I tend to keep quiet because it's not nice.
Okay, so he keeps quiet. That's probably a good idea. Not to, once you get going, you'll have to cook every meal. Okay, what about this one? Ask for ketchup, Lena.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Do you really? Oh, it's a definite no. Okay, definitely no.
Big
That's
no,
right.
big
No.
no.
Big
No,
no.
it's a no.
They all eat ketchup and kids love ketchup, but my advice would be wait until the kids ask for ketchup, okay? Because you won't have to wait very long. The kids want ketchup as well, but let them ask. All right? Ketchup is relatively modern, like mustard and other kinds of sauces. So Spanish are not really keen, not too happy about those things. All right? What about ask to repeat? Can I have some more? Is that good or bad? Lena?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. They'd be really happy if you asked for some more. Yeah, yeah. What about eat the bread? One of the funny things about Spanish eat with bread. Okay, the Spanish eat with bread, and so normally when the table is set, there is some bread on the table, and maybe it's cut so that everybody has a portion of bread. Should you eat the bread as soon as you sit down? Sit down, first thing is eat some bread. Is that a good idea? Is that good manners or not good manners? And Nelly, what do you think? Nelly's going to, going to Zamora, which is called Tierra de Pan. Nelly, this is the land of bread. Okay, with the bread from Zamora is very, very famous and very, very good. And so you get to the table and there's some bread. Do you eat it or do you wait until the food is served?
I would wait until the food is served.
You do, don't you? Absolutely. You wait until the food is served. Okay. So that is just a sort of manners thing. It's a Spanish custom that you only eat the bread with the food, not before the food. And in fact, the Spanish families complain about their children. You've eaten all the bread. Now I've got to give you some more. You know, you have to eat your vegetables, not the bread. Okay, fair enough. What about keep some food to keep later in your room? So this is a good pizza. I'm going to keep some and take it to my room. What do you think, Nelly? Is that a good idea?
I don't think so, no.
It's not a good idea. They say, how strange, all right? They say, how strange. We always wonder, Spanish people don't eat between meals. Maybe because they have very large meals, okay? Offered to pay for the food. That food was so good, let me give you €5. What do you think, Sarah Schauf? Yes or no?
No, I don't think so.
No, absolutely not. How can you possibly do this? Now, I will say this, all right? I will say this. The Spanish people have got a strange relationship with money. They don't like to talk about money. And normally, in England, if you invite somebody using the verb to invite somebody to come to the cinema with you or to do something with you, in English, it does not mean automatically that you will pay for them. Right? So I might invite you, well, let's go to a football match or let's go to the cinema. It does not mean that I will pay for your ticket. It's possible, all right? But it's not, we don't assume this. In Spanish, the verb to invitar does mean that the assumption is that the person who suggests it will pay for your ticket, okay? But they have to use the word invitar. And so when there's a social event, if you're going to the cinema, if you're going to a restaurant with the family, it is a good idea to say, how much will it cost? Okay. And they will probably say, don't be silly. We are inviting you to invitamos. But not all the time. And we did have a case of one of our volunteers who was invited to go with the family on a trip which lasted 4 days. And they went to a hotel. He had to share a room with the 2 kids and have the meals with the family. And at the end of the vacation, they said to him, okay, Corbin, let's see, hotel, restaurant, you have to pay us 250 euros. And he was upset because he didn't know this. And I understand him, absolutely, you know. And the other thing he said, well, look, if I knew I was going to have to pay 250 euros, I would have said no, because I didn't want to go and sleep with the children in their bedroom. You know, I would have spent 250 euros doing something else. So anyway, pay for your food. Don't. What about offer to help lay the table and do the washing up? Yes or no? Sarah, again, Sarah Schauf.
Yeah, of course, because you also eat with them and you also, yeah, then you live with the family and it's also part of your daily things you do.
Absolutely. And if you said, yeah, let me do the washing up and, you know, little Nicolas, come and help me. Wow, the family would be impressed. They would be impressed. They'd be happy. Absolutely. Right, use your phone at the table. Good idea, Enrique?
I would say no.
Yeah, I would say no. Again, this is one of the things where Spanish families have conflict with their children. So leave the telephone in your bedroom. Don't bring the telephone. But it's something really important. I'm waiting for a message from my teacher. Okay, so there's always an excuse. All right. And then finally, speak English at meals. Speak English at meal times. Yes or no? Again, Enrique.
Yes, because then you show them that you're practicing with the kids, for example.
Absolutely. The parents will be so happy and so proud. So that's all the things. Absolutely. All those things. Yeah. And don't worry if you don't get them all right, you know. That's why we're here to learn, isn't it? We're here to learn different things. So we'll learn. But actually, you know, Spanish food is kind of, it's good food, but sometimes there are some customs and manners and habits which you think, oh, you know, you just have to learn, look and learn. Okay, typical dishes. Ever heard of these? Croquetas. Ever heard of croquetas? Tortilla de patata, paella. Yeah, you've all heard of paella. But then we got other things, gazpacho, cocido, pulpo, which is octopus, cachopo, which I think I've seen in Germany as well, which is actually in a cachopo is similar actually to a kind of schnitzel in Austria. So it's meat which is then fried with some kind of coating, all right? Okay, so these are all traditional things and you'll have to get used to eating them. But let's have a look. There we go. Here's some typical Spanish food. Can you see them? See if we make them a little bit bigger. What do you think about these then? There's a Magdalena at the beginning. Number one, Magdalena. That's a muffin to everybody else, a Magdalena. Okay, write down desayuno, which is breakfast, comida, which is lunch, or cena, which is the evening meal. Desayuno, comida, or cena. Which do you think it is? Write in the chat box then. If they offered you, if they offered you a Magdalena, would it be desayuno, comida, or cena? What do you think? Write it in the chat box, please, as quickly as you can. Enrique says cena. Sara says desayuno, desayuno, desayuno. Correct. It's the desayuno. Absolutely. What about tortilla de patata? Would that be desayuno, comida, or cena? Write down, write down, write down. Comida, comida, comida. Paula says cena. Correct. Yeah, cena. So eggs and egg dishes are more often eaten in the evening than at midday. Interesting. So more like the cena. Morcilla, which is our wurst, okay, which is the blood. I don't know, is there such a thing in Germany like a blood sausage? Morcilla, which is a blood sausage, which is a very heavy thing. Would that be comida, cena, or desayuno? Well, funnily enough, it's more likely that you would have it as a cena, as an evening meal with your eggs. It's very heavy. If you like it, you will love it. If you don't like it, you say, thank you. I thank you for letting me try it. All right, the black pudding. What about the bocadillo de jamón? That's a cured ham sandwich. Comida, cena, desayuno. What do you think? Comida, desayuno, or cena, the bocadillo, or something else? It's more likely to be the cena, which is the evening meal, or the merienda, or the almuerzo. Okay, good. What about there? Instead of cereal, they say cereales. Cereales. What do you think? Desayuno, comida, or cena? Anybody? Desayuno, of course. Yeah, good. What about a cocido? Oh my God, that is one of the biggest, heaviest meals which you could imagine in Spain. Okay, a cocido. A cocido, if you can see there, it has some beans, and it also has a soup, and it also has some pasta, and it also has some meat. Sara says comida. Yeah. So maybe you like the soup, maybe you like the meat. It's all cooked together. Okay. And it's many Spanish people's absolute favorite food. Okay. If you get a cocido, you know, everyone, oh yeah, today cocido. Well, let's see. What about pescadito frito, which is little fried fish? What would that be? Comida, Cena, desayuno. Sara says cena. The other Sara says comida. Cena, okay, probably the cena. So we can see that when things are easy to make, if we look here, things like torrijas, things like pescadito, bocadillo de jamón, huevos rotos, which is eggs with ham and fried potatoes, or croquetas, they tend to be things which are quicker, and they tend to be the cena, the evening meal. But things which are more difficult, like a fabada, like a paella, or like a cocido, they would tend to be things which take longer and are eaten as the comida. And very often the Spanish families will make the food the day before in the evening and then eat it at midday the following day. So those are just something. Just one last thing, churros. Churros. When would you have churros? Desayuno, comida, o cena? The churros down there at the bottom. Desayuno, comida, or cena. Those would be not for the cena. Thank you, Sarah. They would be for the desayuno. So that would be a really special day when the family's together, maybe on a Sunday. Let's have some churros. Yeah. Okay, all right, let's go on then. So that's all we're going to say about food. Look, we spent a whole hour talking about food, but Spanish people speak constantly about food. Let's look a little bit about the history of Spain. We won't spend very much time on this, but I just wanted to see a few things. So the history, kind of primitive history of Spain, we could say before the Romans. Obviously, we had the Goths and the Phoenicians and the Celts, okay? So some parts of Spain in the north and in the west have a very similar culture to the Irish in some of the symbols because they're Celtic. Then the Romans invaded, the Romans came to Spain, and Spain was called then Hispania, which was a province of the Roman Empire. And they found gold and they found silver. And so they built roads and they founded places. So cities like Cordoba, cities like Salamanca, cities like Tarragona or Valencia, or even Alicante, which was called Lucentum. These were Roman cities. Okay. Then after the Romans, we had the Visigoths. Okay. And that was important. The most important thing after the Romans, probably the Roman architecture and Roman roads, which were very important, and the introduction of industry with the Romans. But the next big occupation was the domination by the Muslims. And the Muslims were not Arabs, okay? They were what we call Moors. So they were from the north of Africa, from Morocco, that area. Originally, the Moors were Arabs who conquered the north of Africa and occupied the north of Africa, but the people who came were Moors. Okay, so North Africans who came, and they occupied almost all of Spain except the very north. And so there are a lot of cities like Granada, Toledo, and Cordoba, which have a very rich Muslim heritage of architecture. And they stayed here for 700 years. And so basically the Moors, the Muslims, came and they developed an excellent form of agriculture. And so the irrigation systems and production systems for agriculture were actually invented by the Moors, by the Muslims. And they stayed until 1492. So that was 700 years. And in 1492, then the Catholics expelled, first of all, the Jews, and secondly, the Moors. Okay? So suddenly, Spain was a Catholic country, and a very Catholic country. Okay? The country and the church were absolutely one and united, because the church was the influence to unite the country, that we were now all Christian and there were no Jews and no Muslims. The Muslims and the Jews had the opportunity to renounce their own faith and accept Christianity. This is important today because in Spain, people still do not accept the Muslim heritage. Okay, we'll talk about racism later, but people are ignorant in general. They do not understand the importance of the presence of the Moors. Okay. When the Moors and the Jews were expelled from Spain, Spain emerged as an empire, and it had colonies in South America, and it conquered the whole of the South America continent, and even part of North America. And Spain and Portugal had a meeting and said, well, instead of fighting, we will just split America. And that's why the Portuguese obtained Brazil, which was a Portuguese colony, but the Spanish obtained Mexico. So everything to the west was Spanish, and everything to the east of a particular point was Portuguese. That's why Brazil is the largest country in America, in South America. And again, they found a lot of gold and a lot of silver. And what did the Spanish do with all this money? Did they create industries? Did they develop commerce? They did not. They built beautiful buildings, and they bought very expensive silk clothes, and they liked to look nice. But this led to economic problems, actually, and Spain lost its colonies and its empire and its wealth. Okay? In the 19th century, now by this time Spain was quite a weak country in Europe, Napoleon invaded, and there was a war of independence. There was a war of independence against Napoleon, against the French. In this case, the Allies were the British. Now, what's interesting is that this time in the 19th century was a very volatile time. Okay, and so one particular artist who you will see who was influenced was Goya, one of the most important historic artists. And a lot of his work was influenced by the war and the cruelty. So this was one of Goya's famous paintings. Now, into the 20th century, there was even more cruelty. There was a civil war. This is what I said yesterday. There was a civil war between, and there were two sides. There were the fascists and the communists. The fascists won, but it's not that easy because not everybody was a fascist and not everybody else was a communist. The country was not divided in a very radical groups, but people were obliged to go to one side or another side. Okay, and the fascists won, and the war lasted for 3 years. But then the dictator, who was called Franco, continued. If you ask your mum and dad, or even your grandparents, when they first came to Spain, maybe in the 1960s or 1970s, and they might tell you, oh yeah, Franco, the very famous Spanish, the dictator, he was still ruling. And he died in 1975. So he was the dictator for 40 years. That's a long time to have a dictatorship in Europe. And this, one of the artists then who was very heavily influenced was Picasso. And this is his famous, a famous painting called Guernica. Guernica is a village in the north of Spain. In fact, it's very near Tolosa, Ibarra, Álava, Bilbao. And so this was this terrible painting which showed when the aeroplanes dropped bombs on the people in the village. So it's a very, very brutal painting. And we can see this in Madrid, and we will see this in Madrid. It's an important painting to see. So you can see that expressions of art were influenced by the political events. So this one was Guernica, and this was Picasso. Right, in 1978, there was a new constitution, and Spain has been a democracy since then. One thing that happened was that the country was divided into different autonomous regions, okay? And we can see there are 19 different regions, and we can see Catalonia, the Basque country, Madrid, Valencia, Andalusia, and then some other smaller ones, okay? So now people are Spanish, but also they're very, very proud of being a Valenciano or a Basco or an Andaluz or a Madrileño. So people are very, very proud of their flag, apart from the Spanish flag. And right now, there's not very much political conflict. Okay, there's a right-wing party called Vox, which we can see down here, a right-wing party called Vox, which is very right-wing, anti-immigration, anti-feminist, anti-communist, anti-everything. And they say, we want Spain to be united. Okay, so they oppose the Catalonians and they oppose the Basques. Right. 20 years ago, there was there was violence and terrorism in the Basque country. Now, it is possible that you will see a poster saying Independencia, independence for the Basque country, but there's no violence, okay? There's no conflict. In Catalonia, a few years ago, they wanted to have a referendum, but there was no referendum. Okay, so again, you will probably see more expressions of independence in Catalonia now than in the Basque country. So that's the history of Spain, and those are some things, and it is typical, obviously, each particular region has its stereotype. Do you understand? The stereotypes are typical. So, for example, let me ask you, what people think, for example, from Andalusia, other Spanish people might say, oh, the Andalusians, they're always dancing, singing, they never work, they're always thinking about partying. That's all they care about. Yep. And then the Andalusian would say, oh, well, you know, the Madrileños, people from Madrid are famous because they just think they're the best. They think they're very sophisticated. They think that nobody is as good as them. Okay? And then the people from Madrid would say, oh, the people from Galicia in the northwest, typically stereotype, oh, the Galicians, yeah, they're very nice, oh, but they're very sentimental. They always cry about everything because all they do is have sentiments. They're very nostalgic when they leave their part of Spain and travel. When they get homesick. They always want to go home to Galicia. And then the people from Galicia would say, oh, the Castellanos, the ones next door in the green area, what would they say about them? Oh, they're so serious and so conservative. They have no feelings about anything. They're very dry people. And so on. And then finally, people from Barcelona or people from Catalonia. And other people in Spain would say, oh, you know, they always want to be different. They're always talking about money. They never want to spend their money. So each of the stereotypes are really strong. And if you're going to live in Castilla, I think it's very possible that you would hear some of the stereotypes, what people think about ones from other countries. For us, we won't notice any difference, actually. We won't notice much difference. What we will notice the difference are the kinds of foods they eat, which are probably going to be quite different, okay? Quite different in the north, where it's colder, to the south, where it's warmer, and also the times. In the south, people often eat later in the afternoon. In the north, people tend to eat a little bit earlier, but it depends very much on the family. And the Valencianos, what's the favorite food of the Valencianos, please? Anybody? The most famous dish from Valencia? Any ideas? Was the most famous dish. Paella, says Alexis, which is pronounced paella, because the L, when it's together, it's ya, paella, okay? And the Valencian people, yeah, indeed. There are still people in Valencia who eat paella every day, literally every day, because they have a huge variety of kinds of different paellas, okay, different ways to eat rice, which actually seem very similar to me, but anyway, a paella, so that's their typical dish. Right, a little bit about the history. So the fact that we had you have to realize, the Romans with their engineering. Okay. We saw Jacob in a video yesterday. Jacob was in a village, or sorry, in a town called Segovia, which is next to Madrid. And he was standing in front of an arched structure, which is an aqueduct, which is a Roman aqueduct, which is 2,000 years old and is perfectly intact, okay? Right in the middle of the city. So those were the Romans with their engineering, with their architecture. Then came the Moors, okay? Agriculture, okay? Irrigation systems. So they developed agriculture and that industry in Spain. And after that, we had the Spanish Empire. So lots of money came to Spain and production went straight down. Yeah, they thought, wow, we've got so much gold and silver, we don't have to work. Then came Napoleon, the War of Independence. Okay. And then finally, as important things go, there was the dictatorship, which was last century, which has still left some consequences in Spanish life. All right. There we go. So Spain today, these are some things about Spain today. Oh, next one's exactly the same, isn't it? There we go. Okay, we got this repeated. Okay, no problem. So Spain today. These are just some peculiarities about Spain. The bono cultural and the cost of living. Okay, this is money, isn't it? So the cost of living, prices have gone up enormously, very, very fast in Spain, especially the basic things like food. So coffee, olive oil, things like this have doubled, okay, or 40, 50% higher than last year. And so the government has given things like the bono cultural, and so they have said, okay, all young people at 18 get 400 euros, but you have to spend it on culture. So you have to spend it on books, or you could go to a festival, or you could go to the cinema or the theater, or you could spend it on video games. All right. So everybody gets 400 euros. Not you, unfortunately. It's only for Spanish people. But there are also other kinds of bonos or discounts which have been brought in for young people because the cost of living has gone so high. And one of them is in transport. So in your local area, you should ask, and we will tell the schools that they should be advising you about if you can get free travel. Okay? So there are different schemes depending on the region and the city, which will give you a free bus pass or metro pass. Today, even though Spain was a very Catholic country, today gender is 100% protected by law. So that means if you are hetero, homo, bi, LGBTQ plus, or whatever, you are absolutely 100% protected by law, okay, against discrimination, and you are free to express yourself however you like, okay, which is very important. The only problem to that is normally when you have a form to fill in, a government form, it says male or female, and you know, you can't leave it blank. All right, that's just the way it is. There's a minimum wage in Spain, and the minimum wage is about 1,000 euros a month, which means that people are protected to a certain extent against poverty. Okay, Spain is a member of NATO, so it does have a military, and it sends soldiers to work on peace missions. You'll see that there are 4 kinds of police in Spain. We have the Guardia Civil, who are a kind of paramilitary police, and they are armed with weapons, and they combat things like narco trafficking, drugs, illegal immigration. So they patrol the borders, and they do look very kind of, yeah, you know, the green uniform with guns, lots of guns. Then we have the national police, who also have guns, and they're normally in and around the cities. You'll also see them at the airport. The national police are also, they have the officers. If you want to apply for some kind of residence permit, you would have to go to the national police. You then have the local police, who are in individual cities, only in those cities. They also carry guns, even though most of what they do is administrative work or traffic. And then we have the regional police, depending on where. So, for example, in Catalonia, there is a regional police. In Madrid, there is a regional police force. And in the Basque country, there is a regional police force who have different uniforms, and they all have guns. Okay? We don't really know what they're for. And most parts of Spain do not have a regional police. Spain is the third most popular tourist destination. And the #1 destination in Spain, of course, is Barcelona, Mallorca, the Canary Islands, Seville, Malaga, Granada, Andalusia. But it used to be only on the coast, Benidorm, Alicante, and these places. Now it's a lot more spread out. Okay. So it's the third most popular tourist destination after France and the United States. 40% of young people go to university. It's one of the highest. Why? Because it is very, very cheap or free. Okay. There is free health care for everybody. They don't pay anything. Okay. Human rights absolutely are protected in Spain. There is no human rights abuse. There's no torture. There's no official discrimination against minorities. There is an emerging immigrant population. We said yesterday, Hispanic people from South America, Chinese people who have come here to do business, open up small shops, Pakistani, North African, Europeans from Romania, Bulgaria, specifically Ukrainians. A little bit different from in Germany, a little bit different than in the UK. And racism. Racism, and look what we're saying here, there are issues about racism, and they're normally based on the stereotypes. So when you see that the Spanish stereotype their own people from other regions, well, imagine what it's like, all right? And sometimes it's embodied in the language, okay? In the language. If we called somebody a black person, this is a black man or a black woman, well, we might use different words in English to say it is a person of color or a black person. We might even say an Afro-American person, Afro-British person. That is somebody whose family heritage was from Africa, but their family maybe was born in Britain. What you would never do in English is call somebody a black, okay? The blacks. You would not say that. You would not use an adjective as a noun. You can grammatically, but it would be very, very, it would not be a kind way of expressing this. Okay, so you'd like to say a black person or a person of color. However, in Spanish, the word which is used is the adjective. So it is a black, it means un negro, or it means un chino, a Chinese. Okay, So there's no difference between the adjective or the noun. And it doesn't sound good. It means it sounds like you are classifying somebody as an object, a thing, rather than a person. People will make an effort and say persona de color, a person of color now. The problem is we use shortened forms. And so instead of saying a negro, a black person, they might say a word like a negrito, which is a diminutive form, a negrito, or a chinito for a Chinese person, which means a little black person or a little Chinese person. And these expressions are what we're going to call kind of passive, non-aggressive racism. And that's more common. And it's just a question of people not being sensitive. Okay, so I'm not saying anything against you or the other person because of their race. But sometimes, well, we will have to educate children on what's the correct word to use. The people who do receive discrimination are the gypsies. Remember, the gypsies have been in Spain for hundreds of years and have brought a lot of culture to Spain, but still they are a minority. They are an ethnic group who in some way are marginalized from normal Spanish society. Okay, so let's just imagine, I can imagine a typical scene. You are living in Vitoria, Sara, and you say, oh, I've made a friend. Oh, and who is your friend? Well, his name is Ramiro. Oh, okay. And where does he live? Oh, he lives in Ibarreche, which is one area of Vitoria. Oh, Ibarreche. Yes, there's a lot of gypsies who live there. And you say, oh, yes, my friend Ramiro is a gypsy. And the host family would go, be careful, be careful. Okay? They don't know any gypsies, probably, but it's just the reputation. So that is, again, it's that passive, non-aggressive racism. And you will see, and it's a good thing, you will see a lot of diversity now at schools. And the children actually are much better than the adults with their attitudes. Okay, and the children are much better with their attitudes about racism and about sexism. They seem to have accepted very, very quickly that some people are binary, they're boys or they're girls, and other people feel differently. So even whilst adults are arguing about this in politicians and in parliament, the children themselves are absolutely fine. Okay, so sexism, again, something to be very cautious of. There was an image years ago of, you have to watch some movies, from Spanish movies from the 1960s. And there was an idea that all the pretty blonde Scandinavian, Swedish or German tourists would come to enjoy the beaches in Spain, and the Spanish men, with their dark hair and a big moustache and a hairy chest and a big gold medallion, the Scandinavian or the blonde women would find these guys absolutely irresistible. Okay, absolutely irresistible. And so this was, again, a stereotype. But the idea of Spanish men maybe not considering that women are equal is something which is not so common now. Okay, it's not so common now. Because employment, again, amongst women has risen, and therefore the economic power of women has also risen. Okay, homosexuality, oh gosh, that's gone. Homosexuality is also, excuse me, it's gone. Homosexuality is also more and more accepted, and you will see same-sex couples in the street, absolutely safe from any kind of aggression. All right? Okay. And yes, so you'll find that things are fine in that way. What you have to realize, and what if you are a young woman, you have to take care, because the new kind of sexism is beyond sexism now. Now it's more a kind of predatory behavior, which I think is happening all over the world, not only in Spain. And there have been a few cases where there have been aggression against young women. And now in Spain, we have a law which protects young women, which protects everybody, not just young women, but everybody, called Solo Si Es Si. What does this mean? Alexis, are you here? Do you have a microphone? No. All right, then, that's a shame. I thought you could explain this to us. This law, which is very, very recent, which is called Only Yes is Yes. Solo si es si. Only yes is yes. And this is to protect people from any kind of invasive sexual, physical harassment or behavior. And that means that, you know, somebody who is being aggressive or a predator is assumed to be guilty unless there has been specific consent by the other person, by the victim. Okay, so recently, because let's say a few years ago, there was a case of a sexual aggression at a very famous festival in Spain, and the boys who were involved said, oh yes, but look, the girl, look, she was wearing a very short skirt, and she was showing, you know, she was being very friendly, and we thought that she was provoking us. And now that law says, well, yeah, I mean, she can dress however she wants and she can do whatever she likes. But if she does not say yes, then it is no. So this is the only yes is yes law. Okay, and the latest instance, if you saw, the Spanish football team, the women's football team, won the World Cup a few weeks ago. And one of the people, the president of the Football Association, kissed one of the players in public. And this was an example of the only C is C, only yes is yes, because she had not consented. And even though some people, it was only a kiss, and he was very excited because they were the champions, people have said this is the perfect example for Spanish society, so that everybody can see she did not want that kiss. And therefore, the Spanish president, the football president, has to go. There's been a lot of consequences. And in fact, we have the hashtag se acabó. It's over. Hashtag se acabó. Okay, which is down there. Which is used then by women, or no, not necessarily women, other activists or people who sympathize with only yes is yes, declaring that it's time for a change. Okay, and that, in fact, there's another hashtag, solo si es si, only yes is yes. Okay, so in fact there have been a lot of demonstrations, and the interesting thing is, on the demonstrations, particularly to protect women, on the demonstrations, the protests, we don't only see women, we see men children, people of all different ages supporting this, okay? So that's a very positive thing, and especially since it's something which is just accepted by young people. Where do you go to meet people in Spain? Well, Spanish people are normally very friendly. However, there's a funny thing. Spanish people are very friendly, but they're a little, I think sometimes they're a little bit reserved, a little bit shy. So unless you are actually presented to somebody, you don't normally just say good morning. So you saw somebody in the street or at the bus stop, you don't normally say good morning because you have no context. I don't know this person. In other countries, it's more common to say good morning to everybody and to have small talk, short conversations about nothing. It's a nice day, a beautiful day. Our friends from New Zealand and Australia say they find it very strange because in their communities, if you see somebody on the street, you smile. You don't know them. Everybody smiles at each other. Don't do that in London, do you, Alexis? Nobody smiles at each other. They think you're mad. Okay? But yeah, Spanish people are friendly. They're casual. They're informal. So you wouldn't necessarily have to do something. Absolutely not, says Alexis. Go around smiling at people. Gosh, they think you're mad. All right. So yeah, they're casual, they're informal. So if you go somewhere, if you are invited to go somewhere with a Spanish person for a cup of coffee, remember most socializing takes place outside the home. It's not common, come to my house. It's really not very common unless you're family. But informal. So yeah, let's go to the cinema. You don't have to dress up to go to the cinema. You can ask, you know, if you're particularly, you know, if you're very close to this person, how are you going to dress? What kind of party is it? If you're being invited to a party. But you will find that personal space, touching and kissing, that Spanish people do kiss each other twice, mwah, mwah, on the cheek. If they don't want to kiss you, they give you an air kiss. They don't even touch your cheek. They just make the sound, mwah, mwah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, it's absolutely fine. If you feel more comfortable shaking their hand, that's fine. What you must realize, though, if you're going to a family gathering, you might get everybody coming to kiss you on both cheeks. Okay, normally you start on the right, and then you go on the left and right, never on the lips with a friend. People don't do this in Spain. But people have got a different idea of personal space, which means about touching you. I've got a friend and he touches me with the back of his hand like this every time he talks to me. Okay, like this, against my chest. And it gets really, really annoying. It gets very annoying when he does this. And it also shows how close. He's a friend. He's not a great friend, but he's, you know, really, really close. And you might find yourself, people are coming so close that you find yourself stepping back. It's not a problem, okay? You have to feel comfortable wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Okay, I think it's safe to say that, you know, especially women do kiss or embrace more than men do, okay? And the other thing which is interesting about Spanish people is listening. German people are very good at listening. And German people are very good at listening and thinking before they answer. And you'll notice this with the students at school as well. Spanish people are not good at listening. They love talking and they don't necessarily listen to the other person. They don't necessarily, it's not a terrible thing. If you don't let the other person finish, you just interrupt and start talking. This is not seen as a terrible thing. This is just the way conversations are for the Spanish. Also remember that maybe your Spanish isn't so good and people might end your sentences for you. That means you're saying something and they're not listening to everything you say, and then they tell everybody else what you mean. Oh no, what Alexis really means is she didn't like the morcilla last night. And Alexis is only actually saying that she's an expert on morcilla, and last night's was very good, but she has tried better blood sausages, you know, on her last visit to the Canary Islands. But they weren't listening to that bit. They're only listening that it wasn't as good. Oh, okay. So she's saying she didn't like it. And this can be quite funny, but it can be, you know, you will need to be patient. Okay, meeting people, WhatsApp groups. You will find, you know, WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups of Erasmus students in Vitoria, or I can tell you some more, you know, foreign students in Zamora. And they're really good for networking. Go and have a coffee with a bunch of people who are going to speak in the same language as you. It's good. There's also an app called Meetup. I've not used it. Yes, it said it's a great one where people meet up at a particular place on a particular day, normally at a cafe or somewhere, to practice different languages, or because they like watching football together, or because they like swimming. And so there are many, many meetup groups. It's a free service. And talking about swimming, actually sports teams and clubs, if you do have a particular sport which you like playing, really good way of meeting people. Okay. And obviously you will meet people at school who will introduce you to other people. Okay. Getting around, this is being recorded. I will send you this in another document, in a PDF. When you're getting around Spain, we have rail system, bus system, and even airline. So what I've put in there is the Renfe, which is the Spanish national railway site, but there are different companies now. So you might prefer to look at the trainline.com, which will tell you all the different possibilities for going from one city to another. And that's the same with bus or coach, with Alsa, which is the biggest company, or Omio, which is a search engine, which will tell you all the different possibilities. What you will find, though, if you're in a local area and you want to get the bus from one town to another, and very often that information is not available online. And you really have to go to the bus station and look and see for yourself. Okay, and then with airlines, of course, we've got Iberia, which is the Spanish national airline, and Skyscanner, which is probably, I think it's a very good search engine. Okay. And these are some documents, actually, when you come. And I did tell you, these are things which I think you should bring from home. So one is a police certificate, the original. I tell you what, a Spanish police certificate is a digital document. And so we can send it and it is still valid. Okay, because it has a reference written on it and you can go online to see if it is valid or not. That's why we actually need the official, original paper police certificate from you to bring with you to your placement. Also, your insurance policy, your passport and copies of your passport. If you're taking any medication, then you must bring a medical report and prescriptions, so that if you lose your medication, we can go to a doctor and get it for you. You will also need, if you are able to obtain it, your EHIC, which is the EU health card. You can apply for it online at home in your country. And if you don't get the physical, the little plastic card, you can download a temporary version. In any case, with a European passport, you would never be refused medical treatment. Sarah?
The EU heat card, we have like a card of we are from another I don't know how to call it, insurance. So we have another health card. Is it also fine? Or do we need this EU?
I think you should try and get the EHIC card because it is free for all European citizens. And it's always best to have two things better than one, okay? Because I know that it's the insurance you use is Dr. Korta? What's the name of
Walter.
Dr. Water. Or, well, I know what it was last year, but anyway, I know there was an insurance company. That's fine, but I think the European health card, if you can obtain it, is also a good thing. Okay, but you will not be refused healthcare if you are a European citizen. So that's not a problem. Okay, when you arrive, we might want to get you a NIE, which is a foreign residence number, and then we have the TIE, which is the foreign residence card. Normally, if you're an EU citizen, you don't need these. You could also join the Padron, which means you are registered in the town you're going to live, and that might be useful, for example, if you want to join a public sports center or use the public swimming pool. Okay, that's something your family would do for you. And then another thing we have to do for you is get what we call the Certificado de Delitos, okay, which is not a big problem, not a big problem. We will get that for you within the first 2 weeks, and that's just like a second police record check from Spain, okay? We will help you get that. If you're coming to Zamora or coming to Valladolid, or to Palencia, we will find a date for the three of you to come together to Valladolid. You will meet Laura. She will get it for you. If you are in the Basque country, I will ask you to come to Vitoria one day, and my friend, my colleague Aitzea will take you to get the certificate. All right, and if you're in Valencia, you'll come with me. And with Yesit, okay, we will take you to get it. So wherever you are, we will help you get the certificate. It's free. All we need is you and your passport, okay? We spoke about... Hello?
Hi, how are you? I just have another question.
Yes.
To the health, up to the certification I need to have about my health status. I don't have the original yet. Now I don't have it anymore. Is it also okay if I like copy it, do a copy, or bring a copy? I have an actual, but it's in German.
Yeah, no problem. You bring it. You bring it along. Bring a copy if you don't have the original. It's not a massive problem, okay? But who is this speaking? Sarah?
Yeah.
And which school are you going to?
Corazonistas in Vitoria.
All right, so Corazonistas are kind of fussy with this. Maybe send me an email. Send me a copy of what you've got, please, okay?
Okay.
Because most schools are not really bothered, but the Corazonistas especially are. All right.
Just did a checkup 3 weeks ago for an internship, and it says I'm completely health, have a full health status. It's not kind of sickness there, but it's in German.
Ah, no problem then. No, that's perfect. 3 weeks ago, that's perfect. Yeah, no problem. Also, you know, Jose Luis speaks German perfectly. Okay, your tutor. So there's no problem with that. but send me a copy anyway. Okay. All right, so we've seen that. That's excellent. Thank you very much for coming. I'm really impressed with your patience at this. So we've looked at Spanish food, we've looked at the importance of food, some of the other social things which are important. Also a little bit at the history of Spain, which tells us how Spain is today, and some of the current situations as regards things like nationality, racism, and sexism. Okay, so we'll look a little bit more into these things, and tomorrow specifically we're going to talk about risk, and we're going to talk about things which you need to be careful of. Okay, so that's fantastic. Any more questions, please? No more questions. I'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2.